Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihil kareem, wal aqibatu lil muttaqeen. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli, Rabbi zidni ilma. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna ma yanfa'una wa zidna ilma. Rabbi yassir wa la tu'assir wa tammam bil khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Quran Academy to Illuminate Minds. We are in Surah Ali Imran, the second surah of the Quran, and we are in ayah number 37 and 38. And we are going to learn about the wonderful story of Maryam alayhi salam. So let's get started with the recitation first and then the word meaning and translation. Ayah number 37 and 38, Surah Ali Imran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فتقبلها ربها بقبول حسن وأنبتها نباتا حسنا وكفلها زكريا كلما دخل عليها زكريا المحراب وجد عندها رزقا قال يا مريم أنى لك هذا قالت هو من عند الله إن الله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب هنالك دعا زكريا ربه قال رب هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة إنك سميع الدعاء صدق الله العظيم. Now, in this surah which we learned, in this two ayah that we learned, we just recited, we will see the word meaning of it. فَتَكَبَّلَهَا فتقبلها ربها بقبول حسن. So accepted her Rabbuha, her Lord, biqabulin, with acceptance, hasanin, good. Thereupon her Lord graciously accepted Mary. Accepted her means accepted Mary, Maryam alayhi salam. فتقبلها ربها بقبول حسن وأنبتها نباتا حسنا. وأنبتها and made her grow nabatan a growing hasanan good. فكفل and put her in the care Zakaria of Zakaria alayhi salam. So Maryam alayhi salam was put in the goodly growth and placed her in the care of Zakaria alayhi salam. كلما دخل عليها زكريا. كلما whenever دخل entered عليها زكريا Zakaria in her. Whenever Zakaria alayhi salam entered her al-mihrab, the prayer chamber. Wajada, he found indaha with her rizqan. Whenever Zakaria alayhi salam visited her in the sanctuary, he found her provided with food. Qala, he said, Ya Maryamu, O Maryam, Anna, from where, lucky for you, Hada, is this? He asked her, O Mary, how did this come to you? Qalat, she said, Huwa, this, min indillah. This is from Allah. She said, this is from Allah. In Allah, indeed Allah, yarzuqu, provides or gives provision. Allah provides sustenance. May yasha'u, to whom He wills. Bighayri hisab, without measure. To whom He wills, He provides risk beyond all reckoning, without any measure. So in this ayah number 37, if we just read, Allah mentions here that Allah accepted Maryam alayhi salam and He made her grow in beauty and purity. So Allah accepted Maryam alayhi salam. He made her grow in purity and beauty. To whom? To the care of Zachariah. And she was assigned to the care of Zachariah. And every time he would enter her chamber. So thereupon the ayah says, her Lord graciously accepted Mary and vouchsafed to her a goodly growth and placed her in the care of Zachariah. Whenever Zachariah alayhi salam visited her in the sanctuary, he found her provided with food. He asked her, "O Mary, how did this come to you?" She said, "It is from Allah. Allah provides sustenance to whom He wills beyond reckoning," which means beyond measure. Now, we see that Allah mentions here that in every time Zakaria alayhi salam entered the chamber of Maryam alayhi salam, he found her provided with provisions. And Allah accepted Maryam alayhi salam and He accepted her in purity and in He accepted her in and He made her grow and accepted her in purity. Now, when we see Surah Ali Imran, the main theme of the surah, as we have been seeing from the beginning itself, that the surah stresses upon Tawheed, upon the oneness of Allah, that Allah alone is worthy of worship, and that Isa alayhi salam is not God, but he is only a servant and a messenger of God, of Allah. And to prove this, the Quran gives us certain facts. And the facts are very clear. The facts are stated in very simple and clear terms that there is no room for any doubt for anyone. So, how does Allah lay the foundation to prove this fact that Isa alayhi salam is not divine? So, we see that at the very beginning of the surah, Allah mentions the greatness of Allah and his wisdom in the way how he shapes us in the wombs of our mothers. We saw this. And he shapes in the wombs of our mothers as he pleases. That's what we saw. And even before mentioning the miraculous birth of Isa alayhi salam, Allah mentions and he gives us an account of how Isa alayhi salam's mother was born. And we know that Maryam alayhi salam, as we saw in the last class, that she was born to the wife of Imran. And that's how we see that the surah has this name of Surah Ali Imran, the family of Imran. So Maryam alayhi salam was born to the wife of Imran. And they had this child in a very old age. And the parents, they wanted to devote the child to the service of Allah. But when Allah gave them a daughter instead of a son, which they thought that they were expecting a son, and they thought they would give it in the service of Allah, but to their surprise, they found that they had a daughter. So the wife of Imran, she expresses her amazement and her surprise at having a female child. Now, when she expresses her amazement, it's not because she's disappointed at having a female child. Rather, she had faith in Allah. And she knew that Allah's plan was better than any of her wishes. So she named her child, we saw all of this, that she named her child Maryam. And we know that according to the Mosaic law, the female child could not be devoted to the services of the temple. But Maryam alayhi salam was a special child and she was to be the mother of Isa alayhi salam. And we see that, so she was a miracle child herself, and she was going to bear Isa alayhi salam. So she was entrusted to the protection of Allah. That's what we see in the beginning of this ayah, that thereupon her Lord graciously accepted Mary And he accepted how? He accepted her and he made her grow in beauty and purity. So she was entrusted to the protection of Allah. She grew in the protection of Allah, in the care of Allah. And we find that these events that are mentioned here, because Allah is actually laying the foundation and preparing the ground for the birth of Isa alayhi salam. So Allah mentions the birth of Maryam alayhi salam to her parents in old age. And also we'll see a parallel story of Yahya alayhi salam, the son of Zakaria alayhi salam, who was also born in a very old age to him. And that's why at the beginning of this section, we see that a few verses before in ayah number 33, we read, Allah mentioned two names, Adam and Nuh alayhi salam. And he mentioned two families, the family of Ibrahim and the family of Imran. And Allah said that He favored them with their descendants. Two different families we see, the family of Ibrahim and the family of Imran, Ali Imran. But what binds them together? In fact, what binds all of the prophets together, no matter to which family they belong, is the same faith that they all belong to, the same faith that they all preached, the oneness of Allah that they all preached. So all of this Allah mentions as a preparatory announcement and the birth of Isa alayhi salam. So we are given information about the house of Imran and how the birth of Maryam alayhi salam happened and who was devoted to the service of Allah because of a vow, a promise which her mother had taken. So she entrusted Maryam to the protection of Allah. And she was a female child and whom she had named Maryam. But Allah mentions here in this ayah that even though she was a female child, Allah mentions that فَتَقَبَّلَهَا رَبُّهَا بِقَبُولٍ حَسَنٍ. Allah accepted Maryam alayhi salam. How did He accept her? Allah mentions specifically بِقَبُولٍ حَسَنٍ, which means he accepted her with very graciously he accepted her. Now we saw that in ayah number 35, we saw that the wife of Imran, she made a promise that she would dedicate her child to whom? To the service of Allah. She said, I dedicate whatever is in my womb. And the word that was used there was muharraran. Muharraran means free from all the worldly affairs, completely for the service of Allah alone. So when the offering is made purely for the sake of Allah alone, and we see that this word muharraran, the root meaning of this is it comes from freedom and liberation. And this is very significant because no one can be totally free unless he submits himself totally to Allah, unless he frees himself from all of the servitude to anything or anyone else. So when submission is for Allah alone, that is actual total freedom. So the wife of Imran, she frees herself from the servitude to other than Allah when she offers her child to the complete submission of Allah. Because she frees herself from the servitude, from the shackles of others, and to please Allah alone, Allah accepts her. Why does Allah specify specifically here that her Lord accepted her very graciously? Is because of this reason, that she completely submitted to the will of Allah and she dedicated her child. And that's why Allah mentioned that He accepted her very graciously. So then it doesn't matter if it's a male child or a female child. Now, how does Allah honor Maryam alayhi salam in this? We see that the first thing that Allah mentions about her is that He accepted her. How? With a gracious acceptance. So that's the first thing, is that He accepted Maryam. That's a big honor that Allah accepted her. And He honored her by accepting her. And then also we find that just a few words before, Allah mentioned when Maryam alayhi salam's mother, she expressed astonishment at the birth of a female child. Allah mentioned that وَلَيْثَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. That is also an honor to Maryam alayhi salam, that Allah is saying that the male is not like the female, trying to say that this female child that you have given birth to is something different, is going to be very special. And then another way of honoring her is that Allah mentions in this ayah, وَأَنبَتَهَا نَبَاتًا حَسَنًا, that Allah made her grow in purity and beauty. Nabatan hasana. And this is also mentioned specifically that He made her grow in purity is very important because Allah is preparing Maryam alayhi salam to receive the breathing of Allah's spirit in her. And this would be His word so that she will be able to give birth to Isa alayhi salam in a way that is not familiar to any human being ever. So that's why Allah mentions that He accepted her graciously and He made her grow in beauty and purity. So Maryam alayhi salam as a child, she was placed in the care of whom? Zakaria. Wakafalaha Zakaria. So Zakaria alayhi salam, he was the chief of the Jewish temple and he was given in charge of taking care of Maryam. And she grew under Allah's special protection and Allah provided her risk and sustenance to her. And risk and sustenance is not just the food and the drink, but all of her physical needs, all of the food, the growth, the spiritual needs that she required, all of this came from Allah. And Allah mentions that her growth was nabat and hasana. So she learned righteousness. She learned knowledge. She learned religion, meaning that her conduct, the conduct of Maryam alayhi salam, her mannerism was delightful and he made her light among the people and she was under the company of righteous people. So Allah made Zakaria alayhi salam as the guardian of Maryam alayhi salam, or we can even say he was the sponsor of Maryam alayhi salam. So she benefited from his guardianship also. She benefited from his knowledge. She benefited from his righteousness because he was also a prophet, and she benefited from his conduct. So how beautifully Allah accepted her graciously is that He put her under the protection of Zakaria alayhi salam. Just as we find that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he decided that Amara, the daughter of Hamza radiallahu, was raised by her maternal uncle, the wife of Jafar bin Ali Talib, saying that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the maternal aunt is just like the mother. So Allah emphasizes this fact here that she was given under the protection of Zakaria alayhi salam. And that is also an honor. That's why Allah emphasizes and mentions that. And then Allah says, another honor of Maryam alayhi salam was that when Zakaria alayhi salam entered her place of worship. So we find that the ayah mentioned, كُلَّمَا دَخَلَ عَلَيْهَا ذَكَرِيَّ الْمِحْرَابَ. Every time Zakaria alayhi salam entered the mihrab of Maryam alayhi salam, and mihrab is what? A sanctuary, a place where which was dedicated only for her service, for her worship to Allah. So every time Zakaria alayhi, this is also an honor that she was given a special place in the sanctuary. And then Allah mentions that whenever Zakaria alayhi salam would enter her presence, would enter her chamber, would enter her mihrab, he would find her with provisions. And provisions, he would find food and fruits and drinks of all types and sort. So Maryam alayhi salam, she was a blessed child and she would enjoy the abundance of all of these provisions from Allah. And Zakaria alayhi salam, out of astonishment, would ask her, who provided for you all this? From where did all of these come? Now we find that Maryam alayhi salam replies, when she's asked, she replies, when she's asked, Qala ya Maryamu anna laki hadha. Where did you get all of this from? What's her reply? Qalat huwa min indillah. What a humble and what a beautiful answer that she gives. She does not boast about that I'm so special, I have been chosen by Allah, and Allah has provided all of this. Rather, she says, she humbles herself before Allah. And she says that this is min indillah. This is from Allah. And then, inna Allah yarzuqu man yasha'u bighayri hisab. So her answer shows that she's so humble in her mannerisms because she has been given under the care and protection of Zakaria alayhi salam, who is also a messenger. Her answer also shows that the relationship between a believer and the Rabb, We find that how she keeps herself dedicated to the service of Allah. And she has a very special relationship with her Creator that exists between her and Allah. And she's so modest in her reply. Now we find that when Zakaria alayhi salam, when he saw the provisions that Maryam alayhi salam was provided, she and the sustenance given, the fruits of winter, he would find that she had it in summer. The fruits of summer would be in winter. So he thought to himself that if Allah could provide these fruits out of season to Maryam alayhi salam, then he can also provide a child for him also. Now, he was eager to have a child of his own, but he had become very old. He had become very feeble in his bones. His hair had turned gray, and he did not know how he would bear a child. But he had this confidence after seeing Maryam alayhi salam being provided with the sustenance, with the risk all the time. And he knew that this was from Allah because she mentioned it that this is from Allah. And she also said that Allah, she mentions an attribute of Allah that Allah gives sustenance to whom He wills, بِغَيْرِ hisab. So sustenance is not just food and drink. Sustenance is also good and righteous children are also as risk and sustenance from Allah. So he took this opportunity, and when he saw that she was being provided by all of this, he supplicated to Allah and he called him in secret, which says in ayah number 38. What did he do? Then and there, when he saw this, he immediately prayed to Allah. Hunalika da'a Zakaria. He prayed there only, immediately he prayed to whom? He prayed to Allah, his Rabb, his Lord. Hunalika da'a Zakaria. He called to his Lord, he prayed to his Lord. And Qala Rabbi. Qala Rabb. Qala Rabbi Habli. He said, Oh my Lord, grant for me, what grant for me? Milladunka. From yourself, Zurriyatan, offspring, Tayyibatan, pure. From yourself, grant me an offspring that is goodly and that is a gift from you. Milladunka. And he also says, Innaka sami'ud dua. Indeed, you are all hearer of the prayer. So immediately Zacharias, after seeing the provision which Maryam alayhi salam was provided, which he himself witnessed, he prayed to Allah then and there. Hunalika da'a Zakaria. Zakaria alayhi salam prayed to his Lord. What did he pray? قال ربي هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة إنك سميع الدعاء. O Lord, grant me from yourself, out of your grace, the gift of a goodly offspring, for indeed you alone heed all prayers. For you, indeed, you listen to praise, you answer the praise. So when he prayed to Allah, he said, give me an offspring, min ladunka. Ladunka means a good offspring from yourself. And why? Because and he also gives the reason. Why is he asking Allah, give me a child from yourself? Because he knows that Allah hears the supplication. He knows that Allah hears the dua of him. And he also knows that Zakaria salam, he's an old man without any progeny, without any offspring. And he had this natural desire to have a child of his own. And this is part of human nature that we want to have our own children. We want to have offspring. So he had seen how Allah had provided the risk for Maryam alayhi salam, the risk in abundance. And with his own eyes, he had witnessed it. So he turned to his Lord in prayer and in sincere prayer to give him also, by Allah's grace, a goodly child. And Allah answers his prayer. Inshallah, this we will see in the next ayah, in the next class, where Allah answers his prayer. And he grants him what he wishes. Now, when Zakaria alayhi salam is supplicating to Allah, when he makes his dua, he is well aware of his situation. He is well aware that he is old. He is well aware that his bones have become weak. He is well aware that his hair has turned gray to the extent that every strand of his hair had turned gray, which means he had reached a very old age. And not only that, he also knew that his wife was barren, that his wife was unable to bear children. So, which means that all of the conditions that are required to have a child was against him, was not at his advantage. So, this is what we will see, inshallah, even in Surah Maryam. So, none of the conditions were in his favor. The only thing that he had is his strong faith and his trust in Allah, in his Lord. And he's so strong in his faith, for after seeing how Maryam alayhi salam was provided the risk from Allah. So this motivates him to ask Allah for the impossible, because for Allah there is nothing that is impossible. Now, that whatever we think is impossible for human, according to human standards, we may think that there are certain natural laws, and we know that these natural laws, they work according to a certain principle, and we think that these laws are final and these laws are absolute. So when something happens which does not confine to the laws of nature, then people tend to fabricate some legends around it and they fall into superstitions. Now we see that Zakaria alayhi salam, he is overtaken by old age. His wife is barren. She cannot bear children. This is the natural human law that we know, that he's past the childbearing age. He has become old. His wife is barren. None of the conditions are favoring him to have a child. These are natural physical laws that we know of in this world. But Allah is not limited by any of these laws and conditions. Allah is the one who makes the laws, and it is Allah's will when something is beyond the human comprehension, when something goes against the natural law, against the laws of science. It's by the will of Allah that He reverses even the natural laws for them. Just as we find that when Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was put in the fire, as a natural consequence, as a natural law of science, we know that fire is supposed to burn anything. Then it's inbuilt in its nature. It's the nature of the fire. If a fire does not burn, then it's not fire. So the fire burns whatever is put in it. This is a natural law that we know. Allah has created this law. But when Ibrahim alayhi salam was put in the fire went against its nature. It did not burn Ibrahim alayhi salam. Why? Because of the command of Allah. Because Allah ordered the fire to change its nature at that time. And Allah ordered the fire, Ya naru kuni baradaw salamun ala Ibrahim. O fire, become peaceful, become cool, become baradan for whom? For Ibrahim alayhi salam. So what Allah is trying to say by this is that when you trust Allah, when you have the sincere faith in Him, then He will not let you down. He will force the laws to bend for you. He will make things subservient for you. He will make things happen for you, which we think is impossible, but nothing is impossible for Allah. So Zakaria alayhi salam, with his sincere prayer, he is an old man, but a man of pure heart. And he put his hope and trust in Allah. He put in his hope and trust in the one who innaka sami'ud dua, the one who listens to the prayer, and the one who is also able to answer all the prayers. So when Zakaria and alayhi salam and his wife, who were past the age of having a child of parenthood, but they were blessed with a righteous child, he prayed for a progeny and he prayed for an offspring who would be pure. Seeing the growth of the mystic child, Maryam alayhi salam, perhaps he may have thought when he was seeing Maryam alayhi salam and when he made this dua to Allah, he may have thought that perhaps Allah would give him to adopt a child. Perhaps he could adopt Maryam alayhi salam herself. But he was not sure how Allah would grant him and what type of a child, from where Allah would grant him. But Allah answered his dua in such a way, Allah surprised him in such a way that He gives him a son of his in flesh of his own son at that feeble age. And when his wife is barren, he is given the glad news of this by the angel, which we will see in inshallah in the next class. So the gist of this ayah is that always have faith and tawakkul in Allah, that Allah can make even the things that are impossible possible for us. If only we have the faith and the confidence in Allah. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Okay, so we are at a very interesting episode in Surah Al Imran, and inshallah we will see in the next class how the dua